It's an argument I hear regularly. You have to buy physical media if you want the artist to be paid fairly. But do you? Is that true? Or a bit of a myth? I figured I should find out once and for all and tell you the answers. We wouldn't be talking about audio equipment and this wonderful hobby if it weren't for the amazing artists that create the music that we want to enjoy. It stands to reason that we want them rewarded fairly, the musicians that is. As it happens, ensuring that occurs is a little bit more complicated than you might initially think. To start understanding how this all works and what it all means, we need to begin with some raw numbers. These numbers were collected from a range of online articles from reputable sources, and I limited my research to only articles that were updated or written after about December of 2024. And so my aim was to keep this as current and up to date as I could at the beginning of 2025. If you buy a CD, the artist is likely to receive around about $2. There's a chance that could then be further divided to pay people like co-writers for a track or the whole album perhaps, but let's stick with $2 as a nice round number. If you can afford to buy a vinyl release of that same album, the artist's going to get a share of the extra money you're spending. In this case, they're going to get around $3 to $5. And if you purchase an online copy of an album, the artist will get around about 10% of that sale. That means roughly $1 to $1.50 depending on the cost of the album. None of those may sound like much, but as far as I can tell, not much has changed there in recent times, so that's a discussion for another day as to whether the percentage they get is even fair. What we're focused on here is just the comparison between the reality of what they get from album sales versus streaming. And then another topic that I also want to park to the side for now is the topic of buying direct from artists or through services like Bandcamp. In those situations, artists could receive up to 75% of the cost of the album, which is fantastic for the artists, but it also opens up another conversation about distribution, marketing, and general awareness, how we get to know that that artist even exists in the first place. And so that's another topic for a different video again. For now, let's stick to mainstream distribution channels where the artist could receive anywhere from about $1 through to about $5 for the sale of an album. If we then turn our attention to streaming platforms, those aren't all created equal. Let's start with Spotify. Spotify pays artists about 0.4 cents, not $0.4, 0.4 cents per stream. That's as an average. It's calculated on a pro rata basis where the total amount of revenue generated by Spotify streaming is then divided up amongst all of the artists that contributed to those streams. In other words, if your music accounts for 0.1% of Spotify's streams, you'll get 0.1% of Spotify's revenue, or the part they share. That may start to seem fair until you understand that Spotify has been known, at least in the past, to pay artists a flat fee to produce music so they don't then get paid royalties. They've then been known to promote those artists over and above other artists where they do have to pay royalties. So essentially, if there's 10,000 streams of those artists that they've paid a flat fee to, Spotify pays nothing more. That model was designed to prevent the exposure of artists that Spotify would have to pay money to by prioritizing the artists that they don't pay money to and putting those to you as the listener first. It's all about reducing how much money Spotify pays to artists, and it's one of the reasons I refuse to use Spotify. Now, you might notice that I was talking in the past tense just then. I don't know if that practice is still going on today, but there was a great interview some time ago on Rick Beato's channel that discussed this practice, and I found it a bit repulsive. What's also a bit repulsive is Spotify's remuneration of artists when you start to compare it to some of the alternatives. Let's start talking now in terms of the revenue that an artist would receive per 1,000 streams to make it a bit easier. If you play songs by just one artist 1,000 times on Spotify, that artist will receive $4. The only other service that pays that miserly is Amazon. They'd pay the artist $4.20. Thankfully, other platforms like Apple, Qobuz and Tidal are far more generous. Apple comes in at $12.50 per 1,000 streams, Tidal comes in at $13, and Qobuz looks like an artist's goldmine by comparison to Spotify and Amazon, coming in with a whopping $18.73 per 1,000 streams. Hopefully, some of you are immediately considering a change of platform, but let's also bring this back to the discussion of buying albums. And to do that, I'm going to shift the decimal point by one position. Per 100 streams, the good streaming services, as opposed to the evil ones, are going to be paying the artists somewhere between $1.25 and $1.87. Compare that to buying the albums where the artists can earn somewhere between $1 and $5, and things start to get a bit more nuanced. Let's say that an average album is 12 tracks long. I know it can vary depending on genres and the way individual tracks might be divided up in a genre like classical, but I'm going to work with 12 tracks as a starting point just for the sake of this example. You can massage the numbers from there if you'd like to. If you play that 12 track CD 9 times, you'll have listened to 108 tracks. If you bought a digital copy of the album or a CD, there's a good chance that the artist would actually be benefiting financially now if you were streaming it instead of using the physical copy or the downloaded digital copy. They'll definitely be better off if you continue to listen to that album via streaming in the future. At this point, vinyl would still be better for the artist because you paid more upfront and they've received more upfront. And on top of that, vinyl often has a few less tracks. So let's say vinyl has an average of 10 tracks. That will take about 30 plays of both side A and side B before streaming starts to catch up and take over. But how many times do you think you've played some of your favourite records over the years? And by the way, I'm not here to shame any approach to how you listen to your music, except pirating, of course. Anything that gets you listening to music and generates income for the artists is fantastic. It's also important to note the audible, physical, and emotional differences of each format. Some have convenience benefits. Some create a stronger connection to the music. Some are more permanent while others are more fragile. They all have pros and cons, that's the point. And then the overall point is to arm you with the facts that you need to just consider how you want to buy your next album. Whichever one you choose, it's great. But we're not quite done. Some will argue that the numbers are clearly in favour of CDs and especially vinyl. Some will also want to talk about Bandcamp and the direct from the artist type channels. And that's all fine and generally true, but let's consider one more wrinkle. It's an intangible in this equation. We can't really measure it. When you're streaming, you're far more likely to just give an album a go when you wouldn't have bought it from the shop. Streaming is a great way to discover new artists and try something out. Every time you do that, the artist benefits, even if it's only a couple of tracks before you decide it's not for you. Streaming services may still stack the deck towards the much more popular artists, so I'm not suggesting this is a perfect system, but what I do know is that there are artists that I now listen to really regularly that I would never have discovered if it wasn't for streaming services. I would never have even thought to buy or even listen to at a record store some of the albums I now listen to. And can you even listen to an album before you buy it at record stores these days? I'm not sure. And so, there you have it. Hopefully you feel better informed about your choices now. And as I said, I'm not here to say which choice is right, just to give you the information. Hopefully what I've told you will help you to better support the artists that make the music that you love. And on that topic, if you want to discover some new artists to invest your time and some of your money in, either through streaming or through album purchases, then watch this video next to find out how AI tools like ChatGPT, Gemini and Copilot could be a great way to discover your next favourite new album. For now though, I want to say a huge thanks to YouTube channel members, to channel Patreon members, and to those of you who leave super thanks on videos like this one. And until next time, happy listening, be kind to each other, and I'll see you here again soon on Passion for Sound.